founder of Patriot Academy. Rick, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Anna. Good to see you. Good to be with you.
You know, this is fascinating to me. We all knew that what the FBI did was unprecedented. Now it's basically legal. We're hearing that they took documents they were not allowed to take. Can you explain why they thought they could even get away with this, or perhaps how what they did was even illegal to begin with? Because we had an inkling, but now we know for a fact that what they did was wrong. I mean, we know they took attorney-client privilege covered documents as well as executive privilege documents. What normally is the consequence of that?
Well, and I don't want to be given to hyperbole at all, but listen, I think we're seeing the complete breakdown of law and order in this country. It's been happening for the last couple of years as we saw no enforcement as cities were burned across our country and very little arrests and bail to anyone that was part of BLM or Antifa, if they were even arrested at all. Then we saw the exact opposite with the January 6th folks. So the two-tier justice system breaks down the law and order system. And then when you allow for these federal law enforcement agencies to act with impunity and do things like what they're doing to the president, and of course they've done it to a lot of other Americans that didn't have the voice that the president had, so they got away with it. And as we've talked about before on the program, this is essentially what the founders revolted over, were what they called writs of assistance, where you go into somebody's house and just look for whatever you want so you can get after them. And just like the communists used to say, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. We're all breaking federal laws every day, on average about 3, because we don't even know they're there. And so that's the kind of thing they did here. They went in and got virtually every piece of paper that they could find in the president's home. And John Adams said that when James Otis gave that speech against writs of assistance in 1761, that was the birth of independence that grew up later into adulthood in 1776. And I just bring that up again to say that's how big this is. That's how important this is to stop this kind of thing from happening. And then to turn around at the same time. And the reason I say the breakdown of law and order, because then to turn around and rubber stamp a president who's been making law with just his pen and just his speeches, sometimes not even with his pen, just by giving a speech saying to airlines that they have to do mass mandates and all these other things, and then airline CEOs bowing to that without there even being an executive order, let alone an actual law passed by Congress. And now here we are again. The president is going to, with just by fiat, steal hundreds of billions of dollars from the American people and the taxpayers to forgive these student loans. He has no power to do that. Did George Bush in 2008 single-handedly decide to forgive and to bail out insurance companies and banks? No, there had to be a law that was passed by Congress. I think it was a bad law. We shouldn't have rewarded bad behavior and bad mistakes and bailed them out. But at least Congress had a voice, the representatives of the people. It's unbelievable to me that people will sit by and let this president do this with the stroke of a pen, and yet Democrats are going to give him a pass. Even Nancy Pelosi saying that he doesn't have the power to do this, as you said. But I promise you, she's not going to give that speech again. They're all going to rubber stamp it and try to sweep it under the rug because they're just trying to buy votes from students with college debt.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did with the border. Of course, in the past, we've heard them speak out against an open border, and now they're suddenly, against it. Now they're suddenly all for an open border. It's very strange. But yeah, on the student loan forgiveness issue, it's very interesting because not only is this something that, as we just brought up, is perhaps an impeachable offense, but it's also illogical. Like, how far back would you go? How much would you forgive? Because everybody has a differing amount of student debt. So what always boggled me about this idea is that it's so different for every single person individually. How can you just across the board say, okay, cancel student debt? Like, there's no logical way to actually implement this.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, think about this thing. It's been a fraud from the beginning, right? People got, defrauded out of their money to go get a college degree they're not even going to use in the marketplace. That's 2/3 of college graduates go do something that their college degree has absolutely nothing to do with. So the whole thing, as Charlie Kirk says, is an absolute scam. I mean, granted, there's certain professions where you need the college degree, but that's few and far between compared to how many people are convinced through the system today they have to go to college. And parents have bought that lie, and they put themselves in debt to get their kids that degree that they can put on the wall and everybody can feel good about it and talk about it at the cocktail party. That has got to change in the first place. But that whole thing was fraudulent. And then the people that had that fraud perpetrated on them are now looking to the government and saying, bail me out for that fraud. I'm sorry, if you made the decision, look, I went into debt when I went to law school and I had to pay off those loans. It would be shameful for me as an attorney making pretty good money to turn around to people that aren't making half of what I'm making and say, you're going to pay off my student debt through your taxes. That is evil and wrong, but that's par for the course with this president. They love class warfare. They love dividing us, and they know that this decision will divide the American people.
Yeah, they love class warfare, that's for sure. And they do it via race all the time, too. But on this particular issue, it's interesting, too, because I don't know if they would be able to even get the support they needed to go through with this. But then if they do you think anybody would care enough to perhaps bring up the fact that Joe Biden should be impeached? Because it just seems like no matter what, there's nothing Joe Biden can do wrong, even if this were to happen. I mean, sure, it's an impeachable offense. A lot of the things he's done are impeachable. He's impeachable by the very fact that he's not mentally stable. So it's like, at this point, it's like none of this even matters, is the sad part, I hate to say.
No, that's how broken Washington, D.C. is, Anna. You're exactly right. I mean, if they were actually following the Constitution and paying attention to a republic that should be the example to the world, they would have invoked the 25th Amendment a long time ago. It was put into the Constitution specifically for this type of situation where you have an incapacitated president, and it's bad for us. It's bad for the rest of the world. It creates chaos around the world when America's not strong and when we have a weak leader like this that everybody knows is completely out to lunch. So if they cared about the country and they cared about the world and they cared about the Constitution itself, they would have already used the 25th Amendment to force this guy to step aside, since he and his family have been leeches on the American government and the American people for 50 years. There's no way they're going to willingly step aside. They're going to have to be forced to do that through the 25th. And these people are unwilling to use the Constitution to save the Constitution. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of hope that the Republicans will be strong enough in January, even when they take the majority, that they would actually impeach him over these things. They may. You can already hear the arguments. I'm sure they're going to say, yeah, but we don't have the votes in the Senate to convict, so why go through it and why get the bad press? You know what? The left never has that conversation. They press their advantage every time they have it. And it's time for Republicans to start scratching and clawing in the trenches to win back our country. This playing nice ball game is not gonna do it. I'll say this as a believer and a follower of the Bible. Jesus didn't sit around petting lambs all the time. He was the lamb, but he was also the lion. And the American people need to start tapping into that lion part of their faith.
You mean Jesus wasn't a socialist? AOC tells me that all the time.
Yes, she doesn't read the whole Bible at all, and she can't point to one thing where Jesus actually acted like a socialist. He's the one that talked about rewarding profit and rewarding hard work, and he took the talent from the lazy, slothful servant, and he gave it to the one that had the most. That doesn't sound like socialism to me. That sounds like rewarding hard work to me.
Yeah, none of those people have ever read the Bible, that's for sure.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Rick. I really appreciate you being here.